Hello all and welcome back to my channel, Rover Turbo. In this video I'm going to be doing a full service on my new Range Rover Evoque. You would have already seen a video of me collecting this. My previous videos, I'll put a link up in there if you want to go and have a look at that. So I'm going to be doing a full service on this, so basically engine service, full check round. I also want to take off the tyres and check them for balance, because I'm not 100% sure that they are perfectly balanced. There's something, a little bit of a vibration, nothing horrific, but I can just feel it very, very slightly. So I just want to check the wheels for balance. So I've got all of the filters and everything like that, so we're going to crack on and get started. Right, so first things first, cup of tea, milk, 1 sugar. Water in first, milk last. Right, so we've got it on the ramp, and I've got all of my filters here. So obviously fuel filter, oil filter, cabin filter and air filter. So this has got to come off. So it's got a bolt missing anyway, bolt's missing, lovely. I'm going to check the oil level because I'm curious whether, what the level is, whether it burns any. And I am going to get distracted by what that is. I guess that's the aircon. Yeah, now take this cover off because you need to get to the fuel filter, which is in here. And then this tube here needs to come off to get this off. So I'm going to start taking this off. Disconnect that there, probably lift it out of the way, and hopefully I can slip that out. Right, let's get cracking on with that. It looks like it's just got simple Phillips head screws, and obviously a 7 mm head on there. Right, so that's it. Yeah, just a few. No, they're actually Posies, not Phillips. I'll unplug that just in case it snagged up, and obviously the air filter, which probably doesn't even need replacing. Don't think there's a date on there. So, but anyway, it's getting replaced with a new filter. So I'm going to leave that loose, and then this, I'll try and wiggle this out. Oh, don't forget that bolt back there. So under the bolt, which holds on this, and then that just slips out. So obviously while this is off, I'm going to give it a visual inspection under here, make sure there's nothing leaking, check the belt, stuff like that. The cam belt is due on this down to mileage, so I don't think that there's any evidence of it being changed. So it's 7 years or 110,000 miles, something like that. Yeah, so that's another thing that is going to be on the list, is doing a cam belt for this. So it's a little bit down from the minimum, but sorry, the maximum, but it is, Okay, so the belt looks okay. I'm just looking at the ribs, so you can't see it in the video, but just make sure there's no cracking on any of the ribs on the inside of the belt. So what I'm going to do now is get it up in the air. Right, while it's up in this position here, I'm just going to go around and do all my usual wheel checks. Put a link here to a generic video I did on how to carry out a professional service on a car. So I go through that in detail. So if you want to flip over to that to go through the whole process, then do that. But basically I'm going to go around all of the wheels and I'm going to check for play, left, right, up and down, brakes, spring, suspension bushes. Right, I've had a quick look underneath it and it all looks good. The only thing that's a bit odd is this. The rest of it is in really good condition. I mean, you'd expect a bit of surface corrosion, depending on where it's been living in its life. The rest of it's in good condition, all the rest of it. But yeah, this is like a metal protector over the plastic tank, and it's starting to go. And I'm not going to do it today, but I'm going to take the tow bar off. So under here we have some 10mm bolts, tray on, and then you've got the sump plug and the oil filter. Right, so that's the under tray off. When I put these back on, the bolt fell out of the under tray, which is not good, is it? Well, that might be one of the bolts for the engine cover. These I'm going to give, put some copper slip back on them because they weren't exactly happy about coming out. Just have a quick looky. Oh, something else I'm going to do as well is a gearbox oil change. So that's the oil filter row up there, and the sump plug is obviously there. First thing I'm going to do is undo the oil filter, change that, and then I'm going to drain the oil. 27mm, and this is an oil filter socket. So you can buy them in a set, and they're really narrow. They're really short. So if you're in a tight space like this, you're not using a massive, because a 27mm sockets are normally massive. And then a cranked handle, this is a snap-on ratchet, and this just makes stuff like this so much easier when you've got awkward positions like this. So I shall get this off, get my hand on it. I want most of the oil to drain back into the engine and not come all the way down my arm. That would be nice. Alright, so this is the oil filter housing. I've given it a bit of a clean because it was a bit grubby, and it looked like you can still see some remnants of it there. Someone's like lathered it up with thick grease or something. I don't understand why someone's done that. I know, you lubricate the O-ring with a bit of oil or whatever, but yeah, that was a bit overkill. So yeah, just need to slip the new O-ring on like that. Put the new oil filter in there, and then you just need to lubricate that O-ring. Right, and before I put the oil filter in, I'm just going to drain the oil out. I've already loosened this off. So we'll let that drain out. It's a bit awkward, but it's not as bad as some of them. I'm just going to tighten this up. Supposed to torque it up to, I don't know, 25 newton meters or whatever it is. No one ever does that. Just don't do it up too tight. Once the O-ring is seated, once it's tightened and it's on its seat, it's tight. That's it. It's going to seal, and you're only stopping it from vibrating loose. You're not making a seal the tighter you do it. So once it's hit its stop, which is there, you only literally just need to nip it like that. That's it. Doesn't need to be tight at all. Okay, we're just going to let this remain to this drain, clean up the seat, and put the sump plug back in. We just give everything a liberal dose of brake clean. Get rid of any oil, the residue. You don't have to do this, but it annoys me when garages don't give everything a bit of a wipe up, afterwards. That's all done. Sump plug is tightened up. Again, there is a torque setting for that, but I've never torqued up a sump plug in my life. So just not too tight. It's only a copper washer or a rubber washer or an O-ring. Doesn't need to be that tight. I've just put a bit of copper grease on all of these bolts, so I'm just going to put the pan back on. Right, so I've got just over 5 litres. I think it's 5.9 litres, 5.6 litres, something like that. It's 530 fully synthetic. So I'm going to pop all of that in there, then check the level. It's currently on the maximum mark. So we're going to run it like that for a few seconds. You see that? It's just below that notch there. And that side's all splodgy. Yeah, I'm happy with that. It's not exactly the easiest dipstick to read, but you dipstick, Rodney. So now we've got to move on to the fuel filter. There's, I think, 4 bolts. Yeah, 4 bolt 10mm bolts to take this protective shield off. And then there's these hex bolts here, 3 of them, and obviously take off the connectors. There's a dummy connector down there, which has got something plugged into it, but it doesn't do anything, supposedly. And then this doesn't do anything, and this is some kind of drain. So that's the 4 bolts off, quite easily done with a 10mm and a ratchet. And then this just goes off. And then you've just got all these connectors. It's going to be a little bit of diesel, I imagine, a little splash. Little splashy splash of diesel. Oh, there you go, there's that one. Oh, you pull it, there you go. Tube here that just goes onto the bottom, and then there's a plug under here somewhere. So yeah, you've got this little plug and a little tab that you just have to pull away. The pointless connector on, if you just use a trim tool, there's a little plastic cover here. It just sort of gets in the way of the electrical connector. So if you just pull that off, hopefully that'll give me a little bit more room to plug this in. Just plug that in, and then the tube. Right, there you go. So that just goes in place like that. This is probably the drain here. If you probably undo this, it probably allows air into the top of the filter and undoes that plug at the bottom, allows you to drain the diesel out of the filter. I would hazard a guess that that's what that is. I'm going to do the bolts up. Then I'm going to put the plastic trim back on. And then these pipes are really awkward. You have to force them quite a bit. It goes on. Goes on there. That goes on there. I'm not going to connect this one because this is the return back to the tank. So the fluid, apparently there is a lift pump in the tank, and it comes from the lift pump in the tank, goes through the filter, comes out of this connector and goes off to the pump, and then it comes back via the other one through here, which is why it's got the arrow on it, and then it comes through here. So what I'm going to do, because apparently you can use the lift pump to prime the system, but it doesn't always work. So I'm going to get a vacuum container in there, put the hose on there and pull the fluid through. But first of all, I'm going to put my metal thing back on. Right, so I've connected my vacuum pump to the return line. So obviously what's going to happen now is that this unit here is going to be pulling diesel from the tank into the fuel filter, filling up the fuel filter, and then going out of the fuel filter round to the diesel pump. It will go round the diesel pump, round all the pipes, and then come back to the return, back through the fuel filter, and obviously up here. So I just need to keep doing that until I'm happy that most or all of the air's out. Right, so I've pulled through a bit of diesel until I saw a lot of the air bubbles go, and then I'm going to try and start it up and see whether it stays running. Right, so that's it. So it's been run up. I'm going to check for leaks, obviously spray some brake clean around there, get rid of any residues of diesel, which it should be good because we caught most of it in the rags. Put the cover back on, try and find a couple of bolts for the front engine cover, put that back on, and I need to check the coolant strength and the brake fluid for water content, see whether the brake fluid needs changing. I'm not going to do it now if it does, but then at least I'll know. Right, so that's done. Engine cover's back on, found a couple of bolts for that. The bolt in the back there's done up, this is done up, this is screwed up. Battery is under here. I've checked it with a battery tester and it is good. 800 amps and it's got 750 amp capacity. I've checked the coolant, I've checked the brake fluid with the brake fluid tester, and that is all good. So this is all done under here. Right, so moving on to the pollen filter. So the pollen filter lives up underneath the dashboard here. There's this plastic panel you need to remove, and these little plastic tabs to remove this plastic cover. Piece here needs to be removed, and then it's up here. You pull these tabs, there's a tab here, look. Pull that towards you. There's one above it. Oh, don't lose it down there. There's a tab there, so this hooks in and then it comes out. And you have to get a bit aggressive with this when you're pulling it out because everything's in the way. There's reasons. Take note of the airflow when you get the old one out. So the airflow goes in towards the car. Airflow goes that way. So literally I've just got to... It's okay to bend these a little bit. You don't get a lot of choice really with this bracket in the way. So you basically just have to curve it round slightly while you're fitting it in the hole. Grease the door locks, reset the service indicator, and do a full scan of all of the systems, make sure there's no issues anywhere. Right, so that's it. So that's how to carry out a service on a 2.2 2013 Evoque. So basically it just follows how to change where the oil filter is, how to change that, what size socket you need, how to drain the oil, the fuel filter. It's quite easy as long as you follow the steps that I've followed, otherwise you'll get airlocks and it won't start. You need to pull that fuel through, unless you want to sit there for 10 minutes turning the ignition on and off waiting for the air to be pulled through. I've seen people do that before, sat there, ignition on, ignition off, and it still does the same thing. If you start it and it's got air in the lines, you're going to get air everywhere, in the injector line, in the injectors, everywhere, and it's going to be a right nightmare with lots of cranking to get it out. So you're better off before you even start to get all the air out of the system as much as possible and fill up the fuel filter before you start the engine. So that's it. So I hope you found it interesting. I hope you've learnt something from it, and I'll see you in the next one. Like, subscribe and share. Cheers.